Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the 241 Psychology Lecture. I was just looking here at the text messages in the chat bar, and I can't explain. That's an interesting way to put it. I'm doing fine. It's kind of chilly today. I have to admit, I am not a big fan of the cold weather. I tolerate it, but I prefer the warmer summer weather myself. Good morning, Andre. It's good to see you. Uh, Hope you're doing well. Looks like we got a couple of people in here today. Yeah, we got 7 viewers. Wow. Hello to everybody. Did I see Michaela in here? Yes. It is cold. It is cold. How are you feeling, Michaela? Everything okay? Fantastic. Well, it's good to hear that. It's good to hear that. Let's go ahead and get started today. This week we're going to talk about early adulthood, which is your 20s and your 30s. So we're going to talk about this time right after adolescence till around the time when maybe you start feeling your age a little bit. So we're going to call that period early adolescence. It's going to be characterized socially. If we're going to think about social milestones, it's going to be that time from when you graduate high school to when you have a family, wife, kids, and career. So it's sort of that period when you are transitioning from a child to a fully independent adult. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about physical and cognitive development in early adulthood, and tomorrow, Thursday, we will talk about socio-emotional development in early adulthood. So you should be able to explain the transition from adulthood to adulthood. You're going to be able to talk about the qualities of physical development during this age group. You're going to be able to talk about sort of the what we would call the statistics of sexual behavior in early childhood. We're going to talk about postformal cognitive development, and then we're going to talk a little bit about careers and work today. Okay? So, oh no. So Michaela had a little boo-boo this weekend, and she's got some nerve damage. Oh no. I hope you are not in too much pain. That's always a downer. So, okay. I'm waiting for something in the chat bar, but I don't see anything. So, one of the first things that your book talks about is this new sort of way of thinking about adulthood. So the adulthood I just talked to you about is from your 20s and 30s. If you guys really think about it, there was a different you at age 20 than there was at age 27, 28, or 30 for sure, right? So in that early period from the time you graduate high school until your mid to late 20s, a lot of us really may not even feel like we're grown up. I don't know if you're like me, but when I was 23 and 24, I certainly didn't feel like a grown up. I was sort of transitioning, if you will. And parts of me were adult-like and parts of me were still kind of adolescent-like. And so we might call that period emerging adulthood, and I might even refer to that later on in this chapter. And it's sort of that early period of time between 18 and 25 when we're sort of characterized by this sort of fluidity of self, or sense of who we are. Am I the only person that felt unsure about themselves at 20 and 21? At what age did you feel like an adult? Does anybody have a comment that they'd like to share online? I'll go ahead and leave that in. You know what I mean? So actually, some of you, wait a minute, some of you are probably 18 or 19. Do you feel like an adult? How much like an adult do you feel? Are you 100% adult, 50% adult, 25% adult? Angeline felt like an adult at 26. Right. Was there anything particular about your situation which caused that? Andre, I think I remember you talking about feeling like you were old before your time. You were always super duper mature. I think Andre's on here. Uh, I was already a mom at that age. I had no choice. Right. There are sort of those social and age graded and non age graded influences that occur during this age. Having a baby at 17 sort of transitions you to adulthood super duper quickly, doesn't it? Wow, Andre felt like an adult at 16. Yeah, he's super duper mature. I think I probably felt like an adult for the first time probably 24 when I got into graduate school, because I had sort of fulfilled all the educational requirements my parents needed, and I was now paying for and pursuing my own graduate education. Plus, I got married. Maybe that's good for me. So the key feature of this period are going to be identity exploration, especially in love and work. I don't know if you remember, you were all over the place trying to figure out what you were going to be. You may have had several short-term, long-term romances where you were sort of, and you may have even shacked up, moved in with some people, and had a live-in boyfriend or girlfriend for a while. And, this is that time when you're super duper self-focused because you're all in between and, you're just super, super self-focused as you're trying to develop a stable sense of adult identity. They said this is an age of possibilities, a time when individuals have the opportunity to transform their lives. Now, what are the hallmarks of becoming an adult? Maybe some people report holding a full-time job. Some people talk about being financially independent. Other people will talk about being able to take care of oneself or a child. And you know what? For each one of you, it's going to be different. What do we want to do as parents? What am I trying to do now with my 19 and 20-year-old sons? Is I'm trying to give them chances to be contributors. I'm trying to put them in situations where they can take on big boy responsibilities and move on towards bigger and better things. Now, I'm not trying to make them do anything now, but I am giving candid, constructive, and quality feedback to their choices. So I can't tell my 19-year-old or my 20-year-old son 19-year-old son what to do with the money he's now making at his new job. But I can critique and tell him what I think about his choices. Now, I don't want to be pushy, but you can give feedback now at this age because your kids are still trying to figure out they move into this new situation where they have all these new responsibilities and new toys to play with and new decisions to make. And so, a little feedback is not a bad thing. But at the same time, you want to make sure you maintain that positive relationship. I know some of you may have left the house under difficult circumstances as teenagers, and not having that relationship with your parent is a difficult thing at this time because you do need that mentoring and support as you face all the big boy, big girl decisions. And one of the things you've got to do is you've got to challenge your adolescents to become more competent. My strategy with regard to that one is each year, my kids, I add another bill onto what they have to take care of for their own financial independence. So when they got their cars at 16, they had to buy their own gas. At 17, they had to pay for their own, 18, when they turned 18, I took them down to Verizon and gave them their own cell phone bills. Now that my son's going to be 20, I'm making him pay his own car insurance. We're transferring that at the turn of the year. And so for me, what I'm doing is trying to challenge them to become more confident in a financial realm, because to me, that's the most important thing that you have to learn how to do as an adult. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can challenge your kids, but the thing is, you can't just let them get comfortable after high school. This is a time when you grow and become the person you need to be. And all of you who are 19, 20, and 21, you're going to have to challenge yourself right now. What you're doing right now is okay, but if you're doing the same thing in 5 or 6 years that you're doing right now, you are going to be an unhappy young adult. So what you have to do as a parent is push the kids too. Any questions so far? Now, this is the time when you are going to be at your peak physical performance. Some of you remember playing sports in high school, your senior year of high school, or if you played in college, you were at your peak physical performance. You could eat what you want, and you were strong and muscular and beautiful, and nothing hurt at all. And that was sort of the characteristic of this early adult period. You know what, though? Starting after about 30, your muscle tone and strength can begin to decline. Now, I'm going to tell you folks, I got into this probably 6 or 7 years ago, lifting resistance, resistance training, lifting weights and whatnot. And I really think that it's important for you to start thinking about muscle tone in your 20s. The things that you do in your 20s become habits that help you have a better 40s and 50s. So keep yourself in shape in your 20s. Yes, that's your peak time, but don't let yourself become soft due to inactivity when you turn 30. Don't do it. Now, you're now out of the safest time of your life, which is after the first year until the end of adolescence. That was when you were least likely to die. Now your mortality rate is actually twice that of what it was when you were an adolescent. Still not going to be anywhere close to what it will be when you reach late adulthood, but still, you now have an increased risk of deaths moving into the workforce. There are going to be chronic health problems may begin to emerge during this period. And, a lot of people at this time are engaging in health compromising behaviors, smoking cigarettes, doing the vapes, alcohol. My boys eat Bojangles probably once a day, which is awful, I think. And I would never do it as a 50-year-old, but as a 20-year-old, you can get away with it during this time. But these are sort of the bad health compromising behaviors that are going to come back to haunt you. Kids now are more, young adults now are more likely to be obese than they were 20 years ago, and and they're more likely to be obese during this age, than during adolescence, and you're more likely to have a mental disorder now than you were during adolescence. And if you ever taken a clinical psychology class, they typically talk about the diathesis stress model. And what we suggest is that mental illness is a combination of some sort of genetic proclivity, some sort of behavioral or personality difficulty that you may have. And mental illness occurs when that hits the stress when you start to experience more and more stressors. And what you'll notice is a lot of psychological disorders have their emergence in the late teens, in the early 20s. And we believe this is because that's when stress starts to bear down on people, and whatever difficulties you had as a younger adolescent now sort of blossom into maybe a psychological problem. The leading causes of death during this age are accidents. Again, it's car accidents. Keep those seat belts on. Do not drive drunk. Homicide is number 2, and suicide is number 3. As you'll notice from both of these graphs, males are much more likely to die than are females in both adolescence and in early adulthood, or emergent adulthood, Okay. Obesity. 34% of people aged 20 to 39 can be classified as obese. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I just want you to know that being overweight is going to increase your risk of hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And you know what? Being overweight is also associated with some mental health issues, anxiety and depression. There are a lot of things that are involved in obesity. So you don't want to simplify it by saying that it's this or it's that. There is some heredity that plays a part into it. The decline in activity that occurs when some people get more sedentary jobs may be related to rates of obesity. SES and ability to get your hands on healthy food may be related to levels of obesity. But the thing is, you need to start eating like anything else is a habit. It's a lifestyle. It's not a diet or an exercise program. What I want you to think of is a healthy lifestyle. I don't want you to think I need to be on a diet or I need to go to the gym and start exercising. What I want you to do is to think I need to live a healthy lifestyle that still includes the exercise that I got as a child and includes a healthy diet. Now, I will tell you that my sons eat absolutely horribly, as I did when I was in my 20s, as maybe a lot of you are doing in your 20s. But I promise you, Bojangles is not your friend. And I picked up about an extra 50 pounds in my 20s and 30s because I chose not to engage in a healthy lifestyle of being active and eating good. The thinnish sort of fellow you see right now was not the guy who existed even at the age of 45. Okay, so you need to get moving. You need to get moving. I play adult baseball in the summer with the other 50-year-old men. It's hilarious. We're old and not very good, but we get around there every Sunday, dress up in baseball uniforms, and go play. You know what? You can get a membership at Planet Fitness for $10 a month. $10 a month. You know what? They don't do it since they've had the coronavirus, but they even used to serve free pizza on Tuesday, every other Tuesday. You go eat free pizza 2 nights a month, and you've paid for your membership. You need to get in the gym. You need to walk. You don't even need to necessarily get in the gym if you just walk around the neighborhood. But aerobic exercise is great for you, and it's going to benefit both your physical and your mental health. Less anxiety, less depression. A ton of people take those antidepressant medications. And they should, but wouldn't it be better if you could exercise? Maybe, no, that's probably not even the right thing to say. But exercise is just going to make you feel better. Now, what are some strategies for losing weight? One of the things that I had to do was I had to imagine an alternative. So I picked the weight that I wanted to be. I picked the size clothes that I wanted to be, and that alternative served as my goal to help me lose 50 pounds. I started January 1st of 2015, and I worked really hard with that goal in my mind, thinking about these alternative clothes I was going to wear and the things I was going to be able to do. And it really helped me lose the weight. I know, Mel, and that's why I stopped short of talking about the link between anxiety and depression. I don't want to suggest that it's nothing, but it's as simple as exercise. And I realized as soon as I said that I was going down the wrong road with that statement. So thank you for stopping me along that route. But one of the things that I argue with about my wife is, I'll get outside on a Saturday afternoon and go walk, and she loves to get in there and watch the Netflix. And I know Netflix binging can be super duper awesome, but if you can just put that screen down for a little while and replace it with exercise, or go to Planet Fitness and walk on the treadmill with the screen in front of you and do an episode a day. Find yourself a series with 5 or 6 seasons, 45 minutes an episode, and try to add some exercise time every day. And for me, it was very important to keep a calorie counter. Your book talks about charting your progress. The calorie counter let me measure everything I ate and all of my exercise. And it made me aware of a lot of the unintentional eating that I was doing to manage my feelings of anxiety. And as I began to became more aware of my eating patterns, I was able to develop more healthy eating habits. All right. Yeah, that's a good point, Mel. And like I said, as soon as I started saying that, I just realized I was being totally insensitive, as if lifting some weights is a cure-all. But it does make you feel better. In fact, it's better than alcohol usage. And I had tried that once upon a time as well. Speaking of alcohol and the emerging adult, I went to college at UNC Chapel Hill, and one of the things that you did as a college student, at least I did as a college student at Chapel Hill, was I tried to drink just as much alcohol as I possibly could because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I think you're going to find that your social situation as an emerging adult may either direct you towards or away from using a lot of alcohol. And the research is pretty clear that you're going to see people who don't go to college are more likely to smoke than those who do, but those people who go to college are more likely to drink than those who don't go to college. And I think it's because drinking is partly a social endeavor that involves cultural rules. And when you go to frat parties or college parties, you don't call it binge drinking, you call it catching a buzz. What you're going to find is that it's really easy to drink more than 5 drinks in a row. And you're going to see that college students are more likely to engage in binge drinking than other students. And you know what? You will even see people on college campuses drinking a super duper amount of alcohol, 10 to 15 or more drinks, and that's called extreme binge drinking. And the thing is, you will notice that some college students do engage in these really, really unhealthy alcohol patterns. I always warn my boys that you can really develop sort of habits of alcohol use that develop into problems later on in life. There's nothing wrong necessarily with having a drink, but you just have to be really careful and develop good habits about alcohol. One of the things we used to do in college, we didn't call it pre-gaming. We didn't have a name for it, but I guess that's what it was. Before we would go out to the bars, we would drink a bunch of alcohol at the fraternity house or at a dorm room and get drunk before we went out to get drunk. And what you're going to find is that two-thirds of students on a college campus will report pre-gaming at least once during the past 2 weeks. And again, while there's a strong genetic component to alcohol abuse, I just tell my sons to be careful in the types of patterns and habits you develop when it comes to drinking alcohol. You're going to have your adult pattern of eating, you're going to have an adult pattern of exercise, and you're going to have an adult pattern of alcohol usage as you move into early emerging adulthood. You are now going to be responsible for cooking. There are not going to be any sports teams that you're going to be asked to join. You're going to have to take responsibility for your activity level. And also, you're now going to be able to access alcohol more readily than you could in high school, which it wasn't that hard to get in high school. And so these adult behavior patterns are going to bear fruit in your 30s and 40s. So, I tell my boys, even though they're thin and healthy, the things that they do now are going to affect them later on down the road. Okay. Your book talks a little bit about sexual activity in emerging adulthood. There are great cultural variations in this. I grew up and came of age, and I was 18 in 1987. And for those of you who are that old, you'll remember that at this time, AIDS was relatively new on the horizon and being talked about by the media. So I would imagine that sexual activity was probably different then than it is now. And certainly from what my older brothers and older friends have told me about the sexual mores of the 70s. And so there are going to be different patterns. But one of the things that your book talks about here are some of the patterns that you'll see in heterosexual behavior. Men tend to have more casual partners, while females tend to report being more selective. There still are rules. A guy can go out and have sex with multiple partners without the social judgment that you might see with females. So they're still under stricter social norms. And your book's going to say that by the age of 20, 3/4 of all individuals by 25, 3/4 of all individuals will have had sexual intercourse with one partner. And what they suggest is that your 18 to 25 age group is going to be involved in more casual sexual relationships than those in the 25 to 35 range, when most of us started pairing off with long-term romantic partners. 3.8% of U.S. adults report being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transsexual. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about the Kinsey Report way back in the 50s, but since then we've known that you really can't think of sexuality as a dichotomy. Instead, it exists on a continuum, with some people being exclusively hetero, some people being exclusively homosexual, and then most of us having existing on a continuum somewhere between fully heterosexual and fully homosexual. So I talk about this in chapter 10 of my introductory psychology class, but we can't think of sexuality as just being your X and Y chromosomes. Chromosomes create proteins. Proteins create you and control the activities that you engage in. And there's these genes that you are given must interact with environmental factors and hormones to produce what we would call the prototypical sexuality. And to the degree that this unfolding doesn't occur in a certain pattern, we get different variations of sexuality. So try not to think of sex as just being an X or a Y chromosome. Your book suggests that there are many gender differences that appear in heterosexual relationships that also appear in homosexual relationships. So you might have a dominant partner versus a more passive partner. You might have a partner that's more of the authoritarian in the family, and another partner that might be more of the nurturing parent in the family. So they're going to argue that you're going to see the same sort of difference patterns sort of gender patterns in homosexual couples that you will see in heterosexual couples. And your book reports that lesbians have fewer sexual partners and less permissive attitudes about casual sex than gay men. So these are some of the sort of just the general statistics on sexual activity in adulthood. Americans seem to fall into three categories with regard to sex. A third have sex twice a week or more. A third may have it a few times a month, and a third have it a few times a year or not even at all. Attitude surveys on sex suggest that married and cohabitating couples have sex more often than non-cohabitating couples. So the idea that you're single and playing the field is a misnomer. There's more sexual activity for people who are in cohabitating relationships than those who are single. Most Americans are fairly conservative in their sexual behavior, and adultery is the exception rather than the rule. And from the Department of the Obvious, men think about sex far more. Or is that a sexual stereotype to even say that? Men think about sex far more often than women do. Now, the book suggests that having a good sex life predicts more positive affect and less negative affect the next day. So good sex is important, is helpful for a relationship. Oh my goodness. Glad that's done. Okay, so I've lost some people here. Oh no. PostFormal Thought. So we talked about the 4 stages of cognitive development in Piaget's model. And you can see sort of echoes of this in the Neo-Piagetian and the cognitive developmental perspective. Children seem to have this pre-symbolic period followed by this period where they're symbolic but not as logical as they could be, maybe a little egocentric. Children then become sort of good thinkers, but they're not great abstract thinkers. And then we argue that all of us get to the point where we're pretty good at thinking abstractly. We're critical thinkers. Now, that's where Piaget's theory stops, suggesting that by the time you're 14 to 15, you have your adult mind. But there are some people who sort of ask the question, what is it that makes a 30-year-old mind different from a 16-year-old mind? Because I know that myself, Chris Roddenberry at 50 is completely different in his mind than was Chris Roddenberry at 16 years of age. What changes? What's the difference between me and the 18-year-old? There are some people who argue that we ought to think about human minds as evolving through a 5th stage called PostFormal Thought. And this is that point in life where you can sort of take in the wisdom of life and use that to sort of think more deeply about issues in your life, where you begin to be sort of more contextual, more reflective on what's really important in life. Rather than just knowing everything, being more willing to sort of think about what things mean to you. I like to think of this as sort of the wisdom age. You know, Chris Roddenberry at 50 is a little more thoughtful and reflective than Chris Roddenberry was at 18. And when he tries to make decisions, yes, he understands that black is black and white is white, but there's also a lot of gray and context in life that one needs to sort in making final decisions, right? And some of the things that I knew to be fact when I was 18 have now come into question as I've developed a little more perspective. You know, I try to think, and some people think more from the heart in this stage where you think about relationships. You know, relationships become more important to you as a factor of life that matters. when you get into post-formal thinking. And so there are some people who argue that the difference, what's going to happen from the child, the emerging adult at 18 to 40, is that they're going to become more affected by critical life experiences, and they're going to develop perspective, or what you might call wisdom. So that's sort of one way to conceptualize the changes that occur during adulthood. Now, we're going to come back to this in a couple of weeks when we talk about the declines and excuse me, my nose is very itchy today. When we talk about the declines in intellectual functioning, we're going to talk about fluid intelligence, which is flexibility and creativity, versus crystallized intelligence, which is the knowledge and the facts that you know. And what we're going to find is that as you move through middle and late adulthood, you're going to lose the flexibility and the creativity more than you're going to lose the knowledge and the facts. And so the difference between 20-year-old Chris and 50-year-old Chris's thinking is that 20-year-old Chris was probably more flexible and creative than his thinking, and 50-year-old Chris is going to be a little more set in his ways and less flexible. Okay. How many of you knew what you wanted to do and had a career path when you were 20? Raise your hand. I certainly didn't know what I knew I wanted to be a psychologist, but I wasn't sure what it was going to look like. Only 20% of 12 to 20-year-olds have had a clear vision of what they want to go, where they want to go in life. I guess I did. It when I was 14 at science camp. I decided to be a psychologist. But really, a lot of kids, including both of my boys, really didn't know what they wanted to do. It's kind of funny. My older son, Chris, is sort of struggling. He's not sure if he wants to go into business or computers or psychology. He's sort of really not sure where he wants to go with his life. My younger son, Zach, on the other hand, when he was a senior in high school, he said, "Dad, how can I make the most amount of money the quickest?" And I said, "Well, if you go through this lineman program at the community college, you can be making $20 an hour inside of 2 months." And he's like, "I want that," right? You know what I mean? So some kids are going to have a little more focus and some kids aren't. Most of them are going to be kind of like my older son, sort of vacillating, not sure what they want. And your kids aren't really going to be thinking sort of about retirement. They're not going to be thinking about careers or houses or how much they're going to make if they pursue this goal. They're going to be focused on short-term goals. So it's going to be harder for them to make good decisions. I keep trying to talk to my older son about possible life paths. And when I talk to him, I'm talking to him about what it's going to lead to at the age of 40. And he doesn't really want to hear that at 20. He wants me to tell him what's going to happen at 21, what's going to happen at 22. And he and I are sort of on different wavelengths, because I'm talking about the 20-year plan and he's talking about the six-month plan. Right. Now, a lot of college students are actually working. In fact, your book suggests that more kids work today than worked back in the 70s, even though your parents and grandparents are going to tell you how lazy you are. You actually work more than they did. But one of the things you really need to focus on and think about for your children is co-op programs and community college programs. You can send your child to college and they can get a 4-year degree and still not know what they want. Or you can send them down to the local community college or get them involved in a cooperative program where they learn while they earn. And so the economic world is changing, and college education, a 4-year college education, isn't as valuable as it used to be. And co-op and 2-year educations are way more valuable than they used to be. Now, One thing last thing I'm gonna leave you with is sort of, I'm not sure why your book talk, actually, yeah, it's a good place to talk about it. I would talk about it a chapter later when we're talking about middle adulthood, but this is fine too. You're gonna spend an awful lot of time at work. Those of you who are 18 and 19, you're gonna spend a great deal of time at work. There's no way around it. Between here and retirement, you got a lot of hours. You need to find a way to stay engaged while you're doing this. Otherwise, life is going to be dreary for you. Mel G, maybe you could help me out on this. I know you've worked for a while and are changing careers. You're going to spend a lot of time with your life at work, and you have to find a way to make that meaningful for you. And Mel, you've talked about how going to nursing school is really meaningful for you, and it's going to, be something that sort of engages you. You've got to find something that you can really get into day to day in order to cultivate a productive mindset. So your book talks about this thing called flow. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of flow, but flow, if you've ever been doing something and lost track of time because you're having so much fun, you've had a flow experience. How many of you have lost track of time doing something because you're doing something you're so engaged in? Anybody ever had that experience? I'll wait for an answer. Okay. If you've ever had that experience, you've had what we call a flow experience. And so one of the ways that you can try to make your life, your work experience more productive is to try and find a sense of flow in your day-to-day life. It keeps you from getting in a rut. It helps you feel more engaged at work, and it's really going to make you a happier person. So your book talks about the experience of flow. It's sort of that time when you sort of lose focus and you really get to feel good about what you're doing. You feel like you have a sense of control, and it makes that workday pass because you're not thinking about yourself and you forget about the time. If you can learn to cultivate a sense of flow in your daily work life, you will have a more enjoyable work experience in your adult life. I don't know how many of you hate your job right now. Maybe you just don't get into it. Maybe time passes slowly. Okay. One of the things that you can do is, like I said, learn how to find a place and a way to make meaning in your job. Task qualities that encourage experience of flow is any job where you can get feedback on your performance. Find places where you can get feedback on your performance. Find a place where you're challenged, not overwhelmed, but challenged. And find a place where you can get feedback on how you're doing. You have a goal and a feedback. And that's really going to sort of give you an opportunity to find yourself a job that really gives you a sense of engagement and productivity. And this is sort of the secret to finding happiness in your job. One of the things that really, when people want to join want to become psychologists, I ask them, do you enjoy spending Saturdays in the lab? Do you enjoy going over data? Do you enjoy reading psychology papers? You have to make sure that the activities in the job sort of fit with what it is you find engaging in your life. And so when people want to know what it's like to be a psychologist, it's fun if that's what you're interested in. And ever since I'm 14, I was interested in this kind of thing. But you have to find that job that sort of fits your engagement. For my younger son, who's the lineman, he likes being around a group of guys, and that's what creates an experience of flow for him. My older son's still trying to find what it is that's going to give him the feeling of flow, that's going to help him be an engaged worker, because you are going to have to spend an awful lot of your life at work. Oh my goodness. So that's physical and cognitive development in early childhood. We're going to talk a little bit about romance and couples, and personality development in early adulthood on Thursday. Remember, webinars canceled for this week. Instead, I want everybody to turn in the course evaluations. You do the course evaluations and forward me the email confirmation that you get. I've provided you a link on Blackboard. Just click on that link and it will take you to the evaluation. And then forward me the confirmation, and I'll give you credit for this week's collaboration activity. You probably are already aware we have an exam on Monday. This coming Monday, it will be our third exam. I have scheduled a review session for Sunday night at 9 p.m. in Microsoft Teams. Does anybody have any questions for me? I'm going to wait for just a second to see if there are any questions that I can answer live on YouTube. I'm going to drink my nasty cold coffee, and then I'm going to go to the gym and exercise for an hour. You have to take time for your health today, or you'll have to take time for your sickness another day. Okay. Well, I'm not getting any questions on the chat bar, so I'm assuming that you don't have any. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. If anybody has any questions, you can send me a remind text, and we can chat about any questions you might have. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in class on Thursday at 1 p.m. Have a great day, and don't forget to vote.